Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Pack count today. We got Joshua, Julia, Isha, Alex, and Amanda all in the house. I'm Joe. Very excited to have everyone join us today as we're going to recap the MotoGP Sprint Race, preview the Grand Prix. We also have Supercars recap and the NASCAR Cup Series. But of course, this is all possible thanks to our Patreon subscribers, Colin the Show, Mark Robin, and our newest one, David, for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. You too can invest in the Grid Network through our Patreon page, link in the video description, or buy me a coffee where you can buy a cup of coffee for everyone at the Grid Network, where it is through the Grid Network specifically, or one of our particular Grid Network team members. They would appreciate a cup of coffee. I know several of them have gotten cups of coffee before. Love to see them get rewarded for taking the time to be on the air to share their passion in motorsports with you, our audience. And Julia, Josh, we got to start with MotoGP. What a race weekend that is starting off already, where we're going to see the Austrian Grand Prix tomorrow and essentially the sprint race today. Tale of two stories from two different Ducati riders. Pecco Bagnaia, dominant, looked invisible. Second place in the points, though, Jorge Martin, chaotic, controversial. Jorge Martin, lap one, turn one, made contact with Fabio Quartararo, who then made contact with Kostecki, Oliveira, Vinales, and Zarco. That's Martin's teammate, another Ducati rider, two Ducati riders. No penalty or sanction called, and as of right now, still Martin is shown in third place. Then later in the race, Luca Marini, contact from Martin entering the chicane on that long stretch. Of course, that chicane was put in after that terrifying accident a couple seasons ago where we saw Zarco's bike nearly collide with Vinales and Valentino Rossi. So three Ducati riders all involved in an incident with Martin. Julia, starting with you, do you believe Martin was at fault? And surprised there were no sanctions from the race control the stewards.
Well, for sure, I think that it could be a little, a crazy day for the paddock, especially because, let's be honest, it's Martin, a Ducati rider, taking out two Ducati riders from the same team, from the Power 46, from Valentino Rossi's team. Valentino Rossi is in Austria at the race, so you could see his face. And honestly, I was frankly quite surprised that we didn't have a sanction, especially for the Marini case, because we've then seen Fabio Quartararo doing something similar in touching and taking out, colliding with Savadori. And then he got a long lap penalty. We're surprised. Why did Fabio Quartararo get a long lap penalty? Because I was thinking, what, did they blame him for the turn one incident? Because he was also there. But then it turned out that he touched with Savadori crashed, and he got a long lap penalty. But when similar thing happened to Martin and Marini, Martin got no penalty. It was the same race, just a matter of laps. As for the turn one incident, it is really hard to judge, to be honest, because definitely it could, and I think it started with Martin braking really late. He decided to brake late to cut up with those positions, because we need to say that he was extremely angry after qualifying, where his lap were cancelled all the time, and that he qualified only 12th on the grid. And when he's second in the championship, he was absolutely angry, frustrated. I think he had a plan to just go straight forward and just take as many positions as he can at the first turn. Later he's braking, and I think this was one of the cases that led to the crash. Of course, counting in Maverick Vinales' really bad start, but this is something Maverick Vinales is known for a long time. Now, I need to say that I'm most surprised with the lack of penalty for the incident with Marini because of Fabio Quartararo's case, and also because of the fact that Martin, after the race, said that he expected a penalty for that incident with Marini. That's why he was pushing really hard to get in front of the other riders. And he was surprised that he didn't get a penalty for that one. So I think, I think he deserved a penalty for the Marini case, especially Fabio Quartararo, and in many cases in other races we got a penalty for something like that. For the first turn incident, well, we have to say that this was first turn on the first lap. Everyone was trying to squeeze in, but definitely Martin brake really late, and hard to judge, but I wouldn't be surprised if he would get a penalty for that. And I don't think that anyone out of the grid would be too bitter about that, besides Martin. But now it's hard to say. I think the stewards haven't decided on anything for Martin yet, because he's been to the stewards, as we've seen by the reporters who are now in Austria. But we don't have any announcement on his penalty for that one. And for the Marini action, there was no further investigation taking place. It was said during the race. So it's really hard to judge, but this is the proof that we have another day and another proof of MotoGP steward not being consistent, and that we don't know what's going in their head when they are making decisions.
Yeah, I'm so disappointed you can't be in the comments boxes. Oh, my glitching. It's the camera doing that thing again. Sorry if it is. I'm really disappointed you can't be in the commentary box, Julia, because what you said exactly what I thought when Quartararo got his penalty. It was for the turn one. That's what I said in the commentary, but it wasn't. It was for the problems that they had with Lorenzo Salvadori. I think with Jorge Martin, you've hit the nail on the head with it, because it's a very unusual situation. He got a great launch, then dropped back, then sort of tried to capitalize into turn one. It's an uphill braking spot, and he clatters in. I'm surprised there was no penalty for that. I really was. There was no investigation, because he cost 3 riders a World Championship points, including Marco Bezzecchi, who was third in the title. So, and then not to get a penalty for Luca Marini was even worse. I said in the commentary, it should have been a black flag. It should, and it probably would have been a black flag if it was anybody else. So I think I hope there's a penalty coming. Freddie Spencer, I've been very critical of him before. He's not exactly the greatest steward in MotoGP history. But in this instance, if somebody else had done that, it would have been a black flag. It would have been a penalty. Quartararo, as you said, Julia, did get a penalty for hitting off Salvadori for exactly the same move. You've got to have consistency. I said actually at the end of the commentary that Jorge Martin did look a bit ill, didn't he? Put all the water over him. But I said he's going to be asking, where's the back door to leave tonight? Because I think quite a lot of the riders will be lining up to punch him in the jaw after what happened today. It's that type of thing, because it was abysmal riding from him today. Don't know if he's struggling, but it wasn't great. And I think it sort of changed the complexion of the race as well, because it was just Bagnaia versus Binder. Bagnaia dealt with that quite quickly. If Bezzecchi was still in there as well, Quartararo wasn't taken out so early, it would have been a more interesting race after. But we'll get that tomorrow. Lap 1 tomorrow, same grid, so it should all be good. I'll reset the camera and see if I stop glitching.
As you said, tomorrow, same grid, because essentially Pecco Bagnaia, he's going to be on the pole. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Jorge Martin and how he could overcome essentially everything from today. Because sometimes when you have a rough ride like that, gets in your head, the mistakes that are being made, you got to do better. And then one of the big things, second place in the points for Jorge Martin, starting 12th is not going to help him try to catch up, and especially if he makes mistakes like we saw today. Now, one of the big things on an interesting note we had to bring up during the coverage we saw, Simon was asked, did he believe there should have been a penalty for what Martin did today? And the response I found was very interesting was, we would not see Marc Marquez get this kind of penalty, and he would do this occasionally, especially when he was on top of his game. Now here we are, Marc Marquez is not on top of his game. We see another rider that has caused an incident where it ruined a bunch of other riders' races today. So overall, it has to be a question for Julia, Josh. Joshua, starting off with you when it comes to essentially Marc Marquez, where people say he would not get a penalty for this. Is this something that the race stewards need to revisit on how the riders race each other each and every weekend?
I think I'll have to throw to Julia on this one, because I just heard the end of that conversation, so I'll have to go to Julia first and then say back to me. Sorry, the power cut's failing in the box. I'm going to switch over, so I'll have to throw back to Julia for a second.
Okay. I just have to apologize for me just raising my hand like that, but my door just opened, so I'm really sorry. Because there is an air conditioning. There's an air conditioning going on. You know, I was like, I had to close this door before. But yeah. So I think it's hard to say if Marquez wouldn't get a penalty for something like that, especially now, because we also have to say that when Marquez, when he's his prime, Stewart was a little bit different. I think there was a lot of controversy still, but I think we had a harder racing than we have now, and then the stewards allowed us now sometimes. And I don't think there is much of sense in discussing if Marquez would get a penalty for something like that, and if he wouldn't get a penalty for something like that because Marquez hadn't done anything in that race. I think it's more important what we said about Fabio, that Fabio got a penalty in the same race for doing something exactly similar, and Martin didn't get one. This is more controversial, and this is more was just cutting our eyes, you know, more than if wondering if Marquez, the great, you know, aggressive rider, would get a penalty or wouldn't get a penalty for something like that. It is more disturbing that Fabio Quartararo got one for something similar, and then Martin didn't get one for something exactly similar in the span of few laps, in the same race, in the same circuit. You know, this is more enduring, I think, that this case. So honestly, it's hard. We all know that MotoGP stewarding has been just awful this season, especially. I think I just saw Maddie Patterson tweeting that there is a joke going around in the paddock that Donald Trump would like his case to be revised by MotoGP stewards for his own success. So I think it says it all. And honestly, I do think that we need something going on. There's something going on with stewarding in MotoGP this season. And we need, I'm afraid that for the first thing we need is revising the stewards and what they're doing. Maybe they just need to have clear instructions, or maybe we just have I don't know, their exact procedures. Voting anything, because the fact that they give a penalty to a rider and they give it to another one for the similar action, almost the same action in the same race, is just making me wondering if someone needs glasses there, because this was the same race, this was the span of few laps. And more funny thing is that there was the Marini case and Martin case was even broadcasted live on TV, and Fabio we saw from the repeat. So I was like, we all saw that. And then we saw they had to tell us why Fabio got a penalty, and they didn't give a penalty to Martin at the same time, when we just clearly could see that it was a similar incident. So I do think that we need some kind of revolution in stewarding in MotoGP, because this is just awful. This is so inconsistent. This is also so unfair to many riders. Even those who, for example, do something and get a penalty, but then they see their colleague from the grid doing the same thing, and they're just going out from this clean, you know, they don't have any consequences. Like Fabio could say, but he did the same thing as I did, and he didn't get any consequences. He got the podium and the points in a sprint, and I got a long lap penalty in a sprint when I was already 15th. And this was even a worst case scenario for me. So honestly, this is absolutely stewarding in MotoGP is absolute disaster right now.
Yeah, and I've said it many a time before as well. Sorry about that, everybody, for the system software was just going wrong, so I've swapped over. So, yeah, I've said it many times, especially this year as well. Freddie Spencer seems to have left his sanity behind with him during COVID as well. It's so bad now. And I completely agree with Julia's points as well. There's no consistency in the MotoGP paddock anymore. There's nobody going, okay, you get this penalty for this, and if it happens again, we've got reference. It's a different penalty every time. So Martin hitting the side of Marini, no penalty for what was a very late dive bomb. Quartararo does exactly the same thing in a different part of the track. You get a long lap penalty and you get told about it twice. It doesn't change. And it's just, Dorna, you know about my rants. Dorna are just stuck in the past. They are really stuck in the past. Their social media presence is nowhere. The way they handle the formula isn't working. The way they promote it's not working. The way they do the stewarding's not working. Dorna is broken. and it's rotten at the core. It needs to be completely changed out. The championship is stuck. And the sprints I would say the sprints have worked. They've worked really well. It gives us a drama on a Saturday. Now we've got this right format for Friday finally figured out as well since the summer break. It's working. So that's fine. Racing, leave that alone. The stewarding, self-promotion, everything like that all needs to change from ground up. And it's not. So it's in a crossroads right now, what we're going to see. But I've said it before many times, and I know Julie and me have discussed it in the commentary box a number of times. Freddie Spencer must go. For the sake of the sport, he's got to go. And just what I said earlier, I'm disappointed that Julie can't be in the box with me this weekend because she's actually going to be trackside somewhere else. So we'll have to organise another commentary box for you. But I was so disappointed because your knowledge of this track as well is amazing at Austria, because you told me in the past. So it's disappointing not to have you on the coverage.
I'm sorry, Josh. As I just said, I'm just going to the Polish Speedway League, to the quarterfinal of the league, like the middle phase. So that's why I came in the country box, because I have a train tomorrow and I'm going to another city. So I'm really sorry about that. I wish I could be there because, as you said, I was in Austria before. I was at this track. I even sat at this final turns. I could see Brad Binder winning his famous race in the rain on the slicks. So yeah, I'm really sorry that I can't be there, but it's just how it went out.
It's okay. We'll get you in for many more. Megan will happily take more races off. I know that for a fact.
Now, one of the things, this track produced some very great memories. MotoGP racing, of course, Brad Binder with that daring race win in the wet and slick tires. Then, of course, Miguel Oliveira, his first win with that last corner pass. Such great memories. This track seems to produce a lot of chaos, but that was all going on behind Pecco Bagnaia. Pecco Bagnaia looked like he was on a Sunday cruise, even though it was Saturday, over 2 seconds ahead of Brad Binder. And Brad, after the race, said he knew it was going to be hard. Early on, he felt like he might have had something, but it was just not meant to be. So overall, just for Brad Binder, it just looks like a little too short. Comment from the channel. Poor Josh is stuck with me, who doesn't know a clue about MotoGP from Omni. So, of course, link in the video description for Josh's channel. But Julia, got to start with you. We know Pecco Bagnaia start on the pole tomorrow. Was today's race an indication of what we should anticipate the same kind of race tomorrow with Pecco Bagnaia on the pole for the Grand Prix? Because it's going to be a much longer race.
Yeah, I think if Pecco Bagnaia will lead from the beginning, I do think we may see a similar race, because I do think and I do wonder that if Brad Binder would be able to overtake Pecco Bagnaia on the first corner and then just try to run away, I think we could see a different sprint. I think then the two first places would be much closer to each other and there would have been more fight for the win if Brad Binder could overtake Pecco Bagnaia at the beginning. I do hope he can do that tomorrow, but we also need to say that today Brad Binder was with soft rear tire and it gave him more grip at the beginning, but of course the tires started to drop, meaning we have to say that Austria conditions are really hard for the tires. Even though Michelin did some special tires for this weekend, it's still really hard for them. So it's hard to say. I do hope that Brad Binder will be able to at least start and overtake Pecco on the first turn, because we don't know that KTMs have great starts. These bikes are amazing for the start. So I hope Brad Binder can do that, or even Jack Miller can do that. And then we'll see more fight. But of course, it's always hard to say for the longer distance compared to the sprint because of this distance and because of the tires. As I said, Austria is a really hard track for the tires. So I think we're going to see riders taking care about the tires tomorrow. And then we have to see. Also, I am pretty sure that Brad Binder won't choose the soft rear tire tomorrow. But, I can say I'm sure, but it's always quite of a gamble. But I don't think he's going to do that tomorrow. I think he'll try to get a medium tire so he could, try to use its strength all over this longer race distance. But yeah, I'm afraid that again Ducati and Pecco are much in the front, especially that we've seen, for example, Marco Bezzecchi, who we've bought instead to be the Pecco's biggest rival in this championship run, even though Fulham Martin is second. It was Brodecki who was on the rising. He was on the rising, like rising run because he was getting better and better. This track today didn't work out for him. Friday was better for him, definitely. But for 4 points, of course, I think he would be able to be fourth, maybe. For example, for sure, he would fight with Miller. Maybe he would get close to Binder. But of course, we can know that because he was taken out on this first turn rumble. Unfortunately, bad situation for him. Fortunately, it was the sprint, so not that many points. It would be tomorrow. But I think we'll see. I still think that Bagnaia will be there, I think he can win. But then there's also Brad Binder, who's one of the favorites. I think if he can start well, I think we can see a really pretty fight for the win. And I do hope that we're going to see the fight for the win, because today, even during the sprint that was supposed to be more of a fight or of excitement, the most exciting fights were for the 7th positions, for the 8th positions, and 9th positions. One, you had 2 Aprilias with Aleix and Maverick. We had Paul Espargaro. And you got to say that Paul Espargaro did absolutely amazingly for coming back from his injury. He's doing absolutely great. And then we have Franco Morbidelli in the top 10. But of course, we also know that this whole grid was stumbled around by this crash at the beginning. But I do hope that tomorrow's fight will be more of the first place, second and third, than of the most exciting battle will be for the 9th place.
I'm certainly hoping that too, because otherwise it won't be the Austrian Grand Prix that we all know and love, because it's such a crazy track. It gives us everything in great races. I think Maverick Vinales had a really poor getaway, as Julia mentioned earlier on in the show. He once again struggled off the line. But that KTM, I'll keep saying it, it has got the best launch device on any bike. And it used to be Ducati with the whole shot, where it used to come down and shoot back up again. We've seen it on the practice starts before, but KTM, so much power can be delivered with little wheel spin, and just it's like a bullet off the line. It's brilliant. So I'm agreeing with Julia. If Brad can get ahead of Bagnaia tomorrow, then we'll have a much more closer race over 28 laps. But if Vinales can get that Aprilia to start well, he will have a run into turn 1 on at least disrupting either Bagnaia and Vinales. And whoever disrupts who, the other's going to go into the distance. Miller, we saw today, he had a great start, got up into 3rd position as well, but then got sort of kerfuffled because he couldn't get inside the right angles as well, because we had Alex Marquez, Marini Brodecki, and all the other drama going on further back with Martin. So he sort of had to lift a little bit. And then we saw one of the riders going off the track on the green at the exit as well. I think that was Luca Marini at the time going off. So it's a narrow turn 1, so they've got to get it right. But I'm not expecting Bagnaia to win tomorrow as easily as he won today. As Julia said, the tyres here were different as well. We've always seen it in the sprint. Tomorrow they'll be on hard fronts because it's a front abrasive circuit. Probably stick the medium tyre in. Some of them will probably stick a hard as well. It all depends on what the temperature is, as Julia said, because the Michelins here really do struggle. So I've just noticed actually that one of the VAR boxes are wearing the same headsets as me. That was disconcerting looking up. But I reckon it'll be either it'll definitely be hard front. I think 90% of the field will go with medium rears, and a few at the back will choose hard just to see if they can pick up something at the end of the race. Another thing you've got to watch out for as well is Marc Marquez. And I'll mention this because it's the last question. Marc Marquez, he finished the sprint race again, which means this year he's finished all the sprint races he's competed in, but he has failed to finish a Grand Prix in 18 months. He's not finished a race since the Italian Grand Prix last year. And this is now getting to the point where he will crash at some point. If he finishes tomorrow, I think it'll be a major tick on his return bucket list. If he crashes again, well, I think Honda might start looking elsewhere, but that's a whole other show with LCR Honda getting all different positions in as well and everything. And I think Brad Binder as well stands a good chance to win tomorrow because he has just signed a new contract. He's happy with the team, and that KTM has really worked hard for this, like Aprilia have. So it's a good structure coming up now.
And as Julia mentioned, tires are going to be a big thing. The weather tomorrow, looking at 29 degrees Celsius, 85 degrees Fahrenheit come the race time. Of course, that'll be 1 hour earlier compared to today's race. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the tire management is going to work out. And this weekend is also the halfway point of the year. Essentially, with the cancellation of the Kazakhstan Grand Prix, we're down to where this is now the second half of the year, and it's still, despite all the domination we've seen from Pecco Bagnaia, we count in the sprint races, it is far from over. Martinez 46 points behind, Bezzecchi 59 points behind. The sprint races, traditionally, if we didn't have them, we will start talking about it looks like it's over. But the way Pecco Bagnaia is performing, he is not crashing out or winning like he was in the past. He just seems to be putting together these great races where he's dominant or he's still finishing on the podium, not crashing it. So Josh, starting with you, how many riders do you truly believe have a legitimate chance at battling Pecco Bagnaia for the championship?
Including Pecco, there's only 4 in the hunt for the title. That's Pecco Bagnaia, Jorge Martin, going in there as well with Marco Bezzecchi and then Aleix Espargaro. And I'll include Aleix in that after his performance in Silverstone. They're the only 4 I can realistically see in the hunt for the title. Marini's a bit too far out of it now as well. Zarco doesn't really fancy the championship. There's even a rumor that Zarco is leaving the Prima Pramac team and he's going over to LCR Honda to take Alex Rins's seat, who's off to the Yamaha team next year. And that at the Prima Pramac, Marco Bezzecchi will take his seat, leaving a door open at Mooney VR46. And that, we don't know who's going to take that up yet. So the silly season's begun all the way around. So there's a lot of moving about going on that is also key on that's going to play factors in the title as well, because they're going to look to see which teams are performing well, which teams got the new bikes as well coming in. Because I think one of the biggest things is if Pecco loses this title to another Ducati that isn't the Prima Pramac of Jorge Martin, if he loses it to Marco Bezzecchi on the VR46 team, that's going to really hurt Ducati because they're on the 22 bike, the VR46s, and the factory team of Ducati Lenovo and the Prima Pramacs, they're on the new 23 bike. So if last year's bike beats them, they're really going to have egg on their face. So they've got to sort of knuckle down. And then with all that going on, you've got Aleix Espargaro slowly coming back into form on the Aprilia, winning Silverstone with a great move and looking strong this weekend. The sprint annoyed me a little bit, how quickly he dropped off and finished behind, was he 6th behind pole? So there's room to find there. So I reckon they're my 4 going in for the second half of the season as well after 10 races.
Yeah, I completely agree with Josh. I think these 4 that he mentions are the most contended for the championship. But I do think that Aleix's chances stands more also with how it's going to look for the riders in front of him. So especially for Pecco Bagnaia, but also for Bezzecchi and for Martin, and what they're going to do in next races, what's going to happen for them next race, so if they're going to crash, if someone's going to crash into them. I do think that Aleix's situation really depends on the situation on his contenders in front. While I think that those 3 Ducati riders, so Bezzecchi, Martin, and Bagnaia, are in a fight with each other, we thought Marco Bezzecchi to be the one who's gonna fight with Pecco mostly, like starting to completely rule out Martin because of his poor performance sometimes, and it wasn't consistent. But even though he did kind of a controversial race today, he's still in that pace and he's fighting, and you could see him getting angry, like feeling that this chance of catching up to Bagnaia may be slipping through his hands. So I do think that these 3 will be fighting with each other the most, even though Aleix has a chance that he's slowly coming back. But it's hard for me to say how it's going to look for the rest of the season because, as you said, we're halfway through the season. There's still a lot of races to go, many sprints that are thought to be crazy, and then many normal race distance races. It's really hard to say, to be honest, for now, Pecco is the leader and he's riding like a leader of the championship, like he should be. And then there's Martin, who we've seen to have quite a hot temperament, going straight to this race, just trying to get as many positions as he can after this poor qualifying and almost taking out a few people. And then there's Kostecki, who was extremely angry today. But for example, he had quite a good pace and he could do a lot in the sprint, but he was taken out. So this is racing. Many things depends on plenty of factors, happening that sometimes are not the riders' fault. So I do think that those three I mentioned are the biggest contenders for the title. Of course, with Bagnaia in front. And Bagnaia now standing the biggest chance to get a title.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with this championship, how many rides could hang in there with Pecco Bagnaia. One comment in the chat to me, Marc Marquez needs to take 2024 off, rest his body, get fit for 2025. I think silly season is really going to dictate what's going to happen with Marc Marquez, where he ends up for next year. Now, of course, MotoGP, the race is tomorrow. We'll recap that race right here on Grid Life Wrap Up. But before we do that, we got to bring in Jackson, and we got to bring in the Pick a Winner leaderboard, because it's time for everyone's favorite game, and so far, one of the most unpredictable games. Pick a winner, and one of the big things, Alex has taken the lead from Kobe. He predicted Pecco Bagnaia to get the win. He got that, and he predicted Brodie Kostecki to win the Supercar race. So for the first time, Kobe Lambeth is not leading. Could somebody finally beat Kobe and pick a winner? We got to start off with you, Julia. When it comes to the MotoGP race, who do you see winning the Austrian Grand Prix?
I am going to go with Brad Binder this time.
Yep, I was going the same. Brad Binder. It was my pick for the sprint and almost got it, but the tyres let him down. And if we're going on the fact that he was right on the tail of Bagnaia for so many laps until his tyre gave up at the back with the soft, there's no way Bagnaia can get away from him. So this is going to be Binder's tomorrow, I think. On a longer race, suits him well.
Almost felt meant to be for Binder for this race, and obviously didn't happen. But I still think plenty of pace in that car. As I mentioned a couple days ago, Austrian team just signed a contract, as we just heard this morning. I think it's going to be Binder across the board here, Joe.
It won't be Binder across the board. I'm going to have to go with Pecco Bagnaia. I just think that Ducati, if he can manage the tires, he could survive outstand Brad Binder's challenge. So I'm going with Pecco Bagnaia for pick a winner for the MotoGP Austrian Grand Prix. And of course, we will recap that tomorrow. And a big thank you to Julia, Joshua for being on the air today for MotoGP coverage. Of course, you can follow them on Twitter, social media, link in the video description, including on our Grid Network page, Julia's podcast on Spotify. So big thank you to them. Jackson, we got to talk about the Supercar race. That first race, what a shakeup we saw.
Oh my gosh, Joe. Chaotic start to race 20 of the 2023 Repco Supercar Series, and the first of the weekend melee out of the gate. Will Brown gets some tough love from Jack LeBrock, on turn one. Lap one was spun, and with heavy damage, he was pretty much done from turn one of the race. And the big news from that outcome is that allows SVG and Brock Feeney to get ahead of Brown in the points standings. Now, we know Will Brown is going out with Erebus Racing to replace SVG. And the big question, Joe, is 8 races remain. And Brodie Kostecki leads SVG by 80 points. But with 4 weekends and 300 points per weekend on offer, that's a pretty small lead. So how do we think Erebus Racing is going to approach this? Put priority on Kostecki over Brown for the championship, or let him fight?
It's going to be really interesting. Erebus Racing said they will not put priority for Brodie Kostecki over Will Brown just because Will Brown is leaving. That changes now that I feel that you have essentially the team that Will Brown's going to be racing for next year. Both of them are ahead of him in the championship. If Will Brown can have strong qualifying results and be up front ahead of his teammate, that is the best thing he can do, because if he's behind his teammate, if he's behind Triple Eight Racing, you're going to see Brodie Kostecki get the priority strategy, the priority setup, everything to help him bring a championship. Because remember, it's been quite some time since we've seen Triple Eight Racing not win the championship. At Airbus Racing, they will love to get that done with Brodie Kostecki with this brand new car. So that's the thing for Will Brown. You got to be ahead of your teammate when it comes to the pace, qualifying, so that way you can make it where if you could go out there, stay ahead, the team could still work with Brodie Kostecki to get him towards the front to minimize any points lost to Shane Van Gisbergen or Brock Feeney. But that's a big thing I got to say when it comes to these two and the race team is they're not going to do the team orders like you see in probably Formula One, other series where there's a clear number one, number two. You're not seeing that right here in the Supercar series. I think you're going to see the two of them be treated equally. The big thing, though, is Will Brown, you got to start up front. You got to be ahead because if you control your race, the team could work on helping Brodie Kostecki out. I don't even anticipate if we saw a situation where Will Brown's 1, Brodie Kostecki's 2, we would not see team orders. It's still very early in the season. We're not at that critical stage yet. So overall, this is all on Will Brown. If he could make the performances work for him and get the wins, he'll take care of himself, and he still could take it as championship.
Will Brown watches as Brodie Kostecki wins the race from the pole position, actually, but had to overtake two Fords in the process in the 40-lap sprint. Today we go 2 more times, and we'll recap it on Sunday's Grid Live wrap-up following the conclusion of one of the bigger races up here with us this weekend, the NASCAR Cup Series at Watkins Glen, and following a big weekend for several drivers, including the 2020 NASCAR Cup Series champ, Chase Elliott. Esha Azim, big weekend.
Thanks, Jackson. Yeah, now taking a look at NASCAR, everyone will be watching Chase Elliott this weekend as he is the favorite coming into the weekend. He came off a second-place finish last weekend and has now returned to the site of his first career win, where he held off Martin Truex Jr. in a must-win situation. So Chase can win here, and he knows how to win at the super speedways. Also, Chase has more control of his playoff destiny here rather than at Daytona. So starting with Amanda, is this the most pressure Chase faces? And if he doesn't win at Watkins Glen, just how demoralizing could this be for him and for the team?
Yeah, I mean, Chase is definitely under a ton of pressure here. He's definitely in sort of this must-win situation. And he does have a great chance here. He has this huge reputation of being the road course guy. It didn't really pan out for him last weekend, but this is his weekend to maybe pull this off. And yeah, he definitely has more control. He would have more control this weekend than when they race again. But in Daytona, obviously, because that race is kind of out of your hands. There's a whole lot of factors that can go into who wins or not. Like, you could do everything right and still have it go wrong for you. So obviously not a great situation for Chase. Partially his fault, partially not, of course. He was injured, can't help that. But his suspension obviously didn't help him, and that's why we see him in this position. But I think that, he can handle the pressure. He's a Cup Series champion. I think he can pull it off.
You don't want to rely on Daytona. That is what I've been saying since I joined Grid Network. I've been saying that on the Gay Racing Podcast for months. You cannot rely on Daytona, and that you have Watkins Glen and Daytona left. He is really good on road courses. Although he didn't win at Indianapolis, that was the best we've seen the 9 car in months, maybe all year. Although he didn't get the win, it seems he might have got his mojo back, and if he's going to make the playoffs, I think he's going to have to do it at Watkins Glen. So yeah, he has a ton of pressure on him, but I think he can do it. I mean, he is the favorite, but he has a lot of other guys who could win this race as well. It's not going to be easy.
And while everyone's following Chase Elliott, Rick Hendricks will also watch Alex Bowman. Bowman is outside the playoff picture, 20th in points, which makes him 80 points outside. So we have a must-win situation for Bowman as well. And with 2 drivers in must-win situations, half of Hendricks Motorsports could be out of the playoffs. Alex, on the Gay Racing podcast, you and Zach discussed Hendrick Motorsports' situation and whether Bowman or Elliott could receive priority. So is Bowman at the mercy of Elliott, hopefully winning at the Glen and hopeful of getting the win and help from teammates at Daytona?
So that's the thing. Once again, you don't want to rely on Daytona. But I think with Hendrick Motorsports, their perfect situation would be, one of them wins at Watkins Glen and one of them wins Daytona. And I don't know. I feel like they probably will be prioritizing the 9 because that's probably a better shot at winning the championship. Hendrick Motorsports prioritizing the 9. But Alex Bowman is in the exact same situation. He's also 80 points behind. He has to win. Chase Elliott also minus 80 from the cut line. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see, like, strategy calls. Are they going to, like, if Kyle Larson's in the lead and the 9 or the 48 is in second and third, what does Hendrick Motorsports do? I'm not really sure. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But again, you just cannot rely on Daytona. I would not trust that at all. But they're going to have to. If, let's say, one of them wins, Bowman or Elliott, they will have to go into Daytona, and they're going to just have to hope they can push the one who needs a win to the front.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to team strategy, like you were saying, Alex, I think that at Watkins Glen is the best opportunity that the team has to kind of manipulate any kind of team strategy, whereas Daytona, so many other factors are going into that race that are going to be so out of their control. So I think that in terms of strategizing and prioritizing one team over the other, there's only so much you can do, really. But it would make sense, I guess, to put Chase in the position to maybe win over Alex if it came down to that. But I imagine they're going to let them, duke it out for the most part and obviously finish as well as they can. And I doubt it'll get to a situation where the team is deciding who the winner of the race is.
And I believe, Alex, we have a comment in the chat box. Adam says it's Chase Elliott's race to lose tomorrow. He needs to win. Daytona is a wild card race. That definitely is. And as Alex has been saying, it's not something that you want to have to rely on. And now we actually have some good news to mention. No rain in the forecast this weekend, which is definitely a welcomed break for everyone not to worry about the weather messing up the weekend. And I know that everyone here at the Grid Network is going to be really happy about this. We won't have to accommodate for any delays with the weather into our shows. And it's also an additional advantage for a road course expert like Michael McDowell, who could definitely utilize this. And now looking at AJ Allmendinger, he's also good at the road courses. He has won here and is also in a must-win situation. So like Chase, he controls his playoff destiny here, leaving it for a chance at Daytona. Amanda, is AJ able to win this weekend, or are he and the colleague team just not up to some other teams? We know that his best finish on a road course is 6th, which is his only top 10 finish in a road course this year.
Yeah, I mean, for AJ, who's someone with a reputation as a road course guy, to have a best finish of 6th this season, he's definitely probably pretty disappointed. And it's also interesting because when you look at the Xfinity Series, even last weekend, like he did so much better than he did in the Cup Series. So it probably is coming down to the material he's working with, and hopefully they can set him up to, like, they bring a really good car this weekend to Watkins, and that'll set him up pretty good and pretty much give him everything he needs to pull out a win. And then if it's left down to AJ, I think that he can definitely pull this off.
Yeah, Allmendinger could totally win this weekend, but will he? I struggle to say yes. I just don't think that team has it right now. I don't think AJ himself has the confidence right now. He seems to be a driver who does better when he has very high confidence. And right now, I just don't think that's there for him. And this move to the Cup Series was a interesting, highly debated move for him because he was having so much success in the Xfinity Series and almost won a championship down there. And I don't know. I just don't think it's really clicked for him coming back to Cup full time. And I mean, if he doesn't win this weekend, he is not going to make the playoffs. And at one point, he was able to possibly make it in on points. He was right up with Bubba Wallace in points. But now he's so far back, and he's fallen out of the top 20. Like, he's behind Elliott and Bowman in points. I just don't see it for AJ Allmendinger.
Yeah, definitely. And now we have one driver who will have a challenging 2 weeks, and that is Bubba Wallace. Wallace is the only driver that can fall out of the playoff picture by points. Brad Keselowski is 143 points above the cut line, so he is safe if we do not get 2 new winners. Harvick is 145 out with a real challenge of staying ahead of Keselowski. Alex, starting with you, how does Bubba and his team approach this weekend? Do they make bold strategy moves to get the best finish, or are they conservative and just see where the chips fall?
I think if you're the 23 team, you need to go for stage points because they need as many points as they can get. However, if you get to a point where we have a new winner, like if you get a Chase Elliott winning or you get an Alex Bowman winning, Daniel Suarez, which we're going to talk about, then he's out. So then it won't even matter. But the problem is with Bubba Wallace, I don't think he can win on a road course right now. So I think they need to maximize on the points and just hope that they don't get a new winner. In Toyota, they are really good on the road courses outside of this 23 team. So they're going to be hoping that their teammate Tyler Reddick can get the win, or maybe his boss Denny Hamlin can get a win. But I think for Bubba, like I said, they just need to focus on getting stage points.
Yeah, like Alex said, new winner for Bubba is definitely a disaster. And to focus on stage points, it's probably their best bet, as Bubba definitely doesn't have the track record that maybe like Allmendinger or Chase Elliott would have in terms of their road course being their strengths. But maybe he'll surprise us, and it would definitely be one for the books if that's how he secures his spot in the playoffs by winning on a road course.
Now, if we look at some past winners, we have 8 past winners racing this weekend. From them, Elliott, Harvick, and AJ Allmendinger have not won this season. We also have some past winners that won elsewhere but not here, and that includes Daniel Suarez at Sonoma, Austin Cindric at Daytona, which was a big road course experience. So, Amanda, is this a track where you look at the past winners as the favorites, or can a driver like Suarez or Cindric put a winning effort together?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, road courses, you've always got those guys that you look to that are kind of like solidified as the road course guys, but it's really, it's so late in the game that people are bringing their all. Even teams like Bubba are going to be, they'd be foolish not to go for the win, in terms of just, or at least you've got to cover off the chance of there being a new winner. So I think in terms of the past guys, that could be favorites. Yeah, I mean, Daniel Suarez was running pretty well the beginning of last weekend, and then it kind of fell apart a little bit for him. But I think Suarez and Cindric could be serious contenders, not to overlook. And then we've already, of course, mentioned like Elliott and Allmendinger haven't won this season, but definitely road course guys. So it's kind of open, but we'll see.
Starting with Cindric, I just don't see it for Team Penske this year on the NASCAR side. It's just been bad. I think Logano and Blaney have been good at moments, but the two team just seems kind of lost right now, so I don't see that at all. Daniel Suarez was the best car at Indianapolis last week, and they could have contended for the win against Michael McDowell if they didn't have that slow pit stop at the end of Indianapolis. So I think if you're going to look at any of these guys, it'd be Suarez, maybe, and he did get that win at Sonoma, as you mentioned. But if you're looking at favorites, I think you got to look at Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick. Reddick has just been consistently the best on road courses as of late, but Chase Elliott, you can't discount that good run he had at Indianapolis. He's always been good at the road courses. And maybe a dark horse, he's had a few bad races. I'm also going to throw Kyle Busch in there, because he's just been quietly really good throughout the race. He just had some issues that doesn't let him finish the races or something else happens. But Kyle Busch could be a sneaky one to pick as well.
So the Go Bowling at the Glen will be on Sunday, 2:30 Eastern Time, 11:30 Pacific. There will be 2 races before the NASCAR playoffs begin at Darlington on Labor Day weekend. And here is a friendly reminder of our BitNow.com Portland Grand Prix IndyCar race coverage. Friday and Saturday coverage from Portland International Raceway, and a special Sunday pre-race show on Labor Day weekend. We hope you subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date with all of these episodes. And as always, there's a link in the video description to all of our individual channels. And now we turn it over to Amanda for Pick a Winner.
All right, thank you. It's time for one of the trickiest games. It just gets harder every week, it seems. We're going to focus on the NASCAR Cup Series picks here. A chance for some people to move up in the standings here. Kobe has recently been dethroned as the leader for maybe the first time this year, or maybe even the first time since we started playing this game. But we'll go to you first, Alex. Who's your pick for the NASCAR Cup Series?
I'm going with Chase Elliott. I think the energy's there, and it would just feel really weird for Chase Elliott not to be there despite his injury, despite the suspension. It just feels like it's meant to happen at some point. So I'm going with Chase Elliott.
I'm going to make that 2 in a row and also go for Chase Elliott. You know, this is the site of his first career win, so he's going to have that extra motivation. And he is the favorite entering the weekend. And as Alex said, you know, I think he's just got a big shot for this.
Last time I made it where for MotoGP it wasn't unanimous. I'm going to add to that. I'm going with Chase Elliott too. I feel the way the road course races have been going, especially with the way they improved the restarts, Chase Elliott, if he has a strong, fast car, he's going to be unstoppable. 3 for 3 so far. Chase Elliott is my pick.
Guys, I'm sorry, but I'm really liking Ty Gibbs right now.
Okay.
Just got pulled for the Xfinity race. We know the Toyotas are fast. Because of Daniel Suarez last time at Indy, and I genuinely think Ty Gibbs could get his first Cup Series. This would be his first Cup Series win, no, guys?
Yep.
I genuinely think it could happen. So I'm, as much as I want to see Chase win, I really do think this could be Ty's weekend.
Wow.
That's a big pick. That could be a really fun first win. Pretty exciting. Shake things up a lot. I'm going to go a little bit safer choice. I won't pick Chase Elliott, but I'm going to go Daniel Suarez just because of how he looked last weekend. And I think that was a really strong showing. And obviously things got messed up for him there towards the end. But yeah, I think he could really get it done here at Watkins Glen this weekend. And then Adam here says, NASCAR Cup Series at Watkins Glen, his pick, Chase Elliott, Brad Binder for MotoGP, and SVG 2 times over in Supercars.
A lot to talk about tomorrow. It's going to be a very exciting show, Grid Live wrap-up right here on the Grid Network. And we want to thank, once again, our Patreon subscribers, Colin, Show, Mark, Rob, and David, for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. You too can invest in us. Link in the video description, or buy me a cup of coffee, where you could buy a cup of coffee for the Grid Network or a specific person of the Grid Network team. Go to our website, gridranking.com. There we have a listing of all our team members linked to their channels, social media, so that way you can support them. And of course, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. That's the easiest way to support us. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon. Don't miss any of our programs. Participate in the chat room. We'd love to answer your questions, read your comments on the air. A couple of comments there. Going with Bagnaia for MotoGP. Omni going for Bagnaia. So I'm not the only one going for Bagnaia this race weekend in Austria. And of course, we're going to recap it all tomorrow on Grid Live Wrap Up. For Amanda, Jackson, Alex, and Isha, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.